So, Monica, what do you need to consider when thinking about branding?
I think what's really important when you first start out with defining your brand, who you are, what you're all about, is understanding who exactly it is you're trying to appeal to. So, who are your desired audience? Who's your target market? And then building your branding around that. Because everything that you do from the start of your branding onwards needs to reflect in who you are, your brand values, if you've got a story, if you've got a USP. So the first thing you really need to do is identify who it is that you're trying to appeal to.
Do you think that will change depending on the style of makeup you do? For example, I'm very much less is more, and the natural kind of, I like the natural vibe. Will that then dictate who my audience is as opposed to somebody who likes a little bit more makeup?
Absolutely, yeah. So the type of content that you create will then appeal to the type of audience that you're trying to attract.
Yeah.
So, if you're somebody that loves bold, bright looks, maybe huge eyelashes or something really, really state of the art, you may be going to choose your music based on that and your background colors and maybe the brands of makeup that you talk about. So everything that you do will always kind of stem down to what exactly it is that you're offering. So if you're all about natural beauty and less is more, just like you are, perhaps you're appealing to maybe an older audience or an audience that really love natural makeup that's maybe vegan or whatever it is. It's going to be completely different for every single makeup artist, but it's really important to understand from the get-go what exactly it is that you are offering. And that all kind of goes back to your brand. It's all part of your brand values and your identity.
Exactly. Well, social media then, I mean, this is a bit of a minefield. There are so many platforms to choose from and, so many content possibilities that you could come up with. Where do you start? I mean, are there like 3 or 4 main ones that you would go for over any others? Talk to me a bit about that.
Yeah, I think with makeup and anything in the beauty industry that's very visual, you really need to be looking at a platform that's going to showcase the visual side of what you do.
Yeah.
So, I mean, when you think about somebody looking for a makeup artist, quite often they're going to go based on images and testimonials and previous work that you've done.
Yeah.
So I think the best social media platforms really to use for a visual service are going to be Instagram 100%.
Yeah.
I think Instagram is, one of the driving forces in the beauty industry. If you look at some of the big makeup artists, influencers, the majority of those have come through from Instagram and then gone through to other platforms like YouTube, TikTok, etc. So I do think Instagram is a huge one. It's a really great way to engage with your audience, to work with brands, etc. I think Pinterest is great for showcasing, a curated selection of work that you've done.
Yeah.
And there's so many, and I think it's about choosing what works for you as a businesswoman or businessman.
Yeah.
And I personally do like Facebook for the testimonial side of things.
Yeah, it's like an extension of your website, I guess. Though,
Yeah,
isn't it?
it's a great place for people to leave a review, and it's very community focused. So I think having a mix of different social media platforms is great because it also gives the option to potential clientele, because not everybody's going to enjoy Instagram.
Yeah,
Some people
or
may
hang out there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So the more consumer touch points that you give yourself, the more likely you are to attract a multitude of different business.
You mentioned TikTok. Now, I have had TikTok mentioned to me on countless occasions, and quite frankly, I just find it a bit overwhelming because, I'm using Instagram, I'm using Pinterest, I've got Facebook, I've got my website, and for me, I'm just like, God, it's just like one extra thing to have to think about. Tell me how, as a bridal makeup artist specifically, you could utilise TikTok.
Yeah. So the thing with TikTok, I find, is that the general demographic on there are a little bit younger.
Yeah.
Not to say that some of the older generation aren't on there.
Yeah.
I do just find that if you are maybe somebody who's doing more trend-based makeup looks,
Yes.
that's where you want to be.
That's what I've noticed.
Yeah, but it does always help to have presence on there, whether it's just 5 or 6 videos that you can repurpose that you've already made on your Instagram Reels, for example, and that you can shorten down and make them a little bit more fast-paced, add some trending music on there. You can always find a way to repurpose content. It may require a little bit of jigging around, cutting it down, changing dimensions, whatever it is. But I do think having some presence on there is not a bad thing. But you don't need to dedicate all of your time there if your audience aren't hanging out there in their masses.
Right, so in terms of content then, because you've mentioned Instagram, you've mentioned Pinterest, TikTok. Let's go down what I believe would be the most popular platform, being Instagram. What sort of content should I be creating?
That will always come after you've established your brand, because everything that you talk about on your social media needs to reflect on your brand identity, who you are, what you offer. So, when I start working with somebody, I always like to sit down and just say, ask them, who are you trying to appeal to? What are they going to find interesting? What are they going to find useful? Whenever I'm starting with my content pillars, which we can talk about in greater detail, whenever I start talking about those, I always like to make sure that content is either useful and informative, or it's interesting and it brings joy, it brings value, it has to. Otherwise, people aren't going to engage with it. So making sure that your content is providing some form of enjoyment or education, I think is so important.
And in terms of how frequently you should be posting, I mean, I've heard, a few months ago, maybe, 3 posts per day, or posting at the same time every day, and it can become quite misleading. Does that depend on the industry you're in or the content you're putting out? How does that work?
I think it definitely will change by the industry you're in. I think for a service that you're offering, makeup, you should really be trying to post about 5 times a week, just so that you're providing regular updates, you're keeping the conversation going. The more you talk and the more you start conversation online, the more likely you are to be in people's head. So, if somebody says, oh, do you know any makeup artists that would be great for natural bridal look? They may have just seen you yesterday talking about a testimonial or showing your favourite makeup pieces for that month. So I think finding a happy balance, you don't want to be just, putting out stuff for the sake of it. You want it to have a reason.
Structure.
Exactly. And again, that comes back to your content pillars. So ensuring that everything that you're talking about has a reason behind it, whether it's to create something fun and to showcase a really cool look that you've created, or 5 tips that you've created. As long as it has reason behind it, it's relevant. So I think having some structure, and then you can add in ad hoc bits and bobs. Maybe you're on set and you want to do some behind the scenes. Add that in because it's relevant, it's current, it's something that you're doing.
And in terms of what time you're posting, I mean, I've also heard, you should be posting between 6 and 9 p.m. on a weekday and between 11 and 2 on a Saturday. Does that still sort of reign true?
I do think that the time that you post is important. I think you will garner more engagement if you post at good times. And a really good way to get an indication of when your audience are online is through your Instagram insights. So you can actually have a little look in the back end of your Instagram profile and understand the best times to post. And that would be when your audience are online. Generally, you find that the morning rush hour time is good because people are on their phones, maybe they're on their commute to work, or at the end of the day, or at lunchtime. So, you need to work out when your audience are online and play to that. You use what you can from your statistics and your insights and, play to your strengths.
And consistency is key. So this all sounds quite consuming in terms of time. Are there any apps or software that could help me with the planning and execution of all of this?
Absolutely, yeah. I do think it can be quite overwhelming having to go on your social media every day, think up engaging captions, what hashtags am I going to use, what
Yeah.
filter do I put on this photo? It can be very,
a job in
very.
itself.
It really is, and there are tools out there that can help you, and they can help alleviate that stress. There are a couple that I can, give to you, and you can maybe use those links.
Amazing.
A couple that I use are Planoly, Hootsuite, Sprout Social, and
Yeah.
these are all planning software tools where you can pre-plan the order of your content, you can pre-write your captions, you can choose the time that you want it to go out, so you can automatically schedule it months in advance, so you don't have to think about it. And that can be really, really useful for some people. I do it myself for my personal profile, for my business profile. And it just means that if I'm maybe not in the headspace that day to be creative and engaging.
I understand that.
Yeah, and maybe a month ago, I might have sat down for a full day and done a week's worth of really cool posts, and I feel confident that they're great and they're going to go out and my audience are going to love them. So yeah, there's definitely some really great tools out there that you can use to help you.
Is that sort of how often you would do that then? You'd spend like a day, a week, which would be your whole week's worth, or how can you sort of split up your time?
What I like to do actually is any imagery that I get in that I think would be of use to my audience, or that would, showcase my skills or garner authenticity for who I am online, I will immediately plug that into my grid, my little grid that I have in my scheduling software. I'll then spend a day to 2 days really going in and creating interesting captions that are going to draw attention and that are going to be thought-provoking in some way.
Yeah.
And I mean, it depends on how creative I'm feeling that day. I might get really into the flow of it. That tends to happen. I would also recommend when you're writing your captions to use something like Grammarly or a space that can help you with spelling and your syntax and punctuation, because that's so important as well, especially when it's professional.
Out there, aren't there?
And those things get noticed, and you want to come across professional, and everything you do online is going to reflect who you are down to a T. So you have to be so careful.
So in terms of being professional, should I pay someone like yourself, a professional, to do this, or can I do it myself?
That's an interesting question, and I think yes to both questions. Of course, you can do it by yourself, absolutely. What I like to sometimes kind of pose as a question is, the time that you're spending putting into your social media, could that be spent better elsewhere? Every day that you spend on your social media, that's a day that you're taking out of your time doing things that you could be doing for your own, elsewhere in the business. So it depends on, if you love doing social media, perhaps you really love having the hands-on approach. Some people absolutely hate it and they want a professional to do it. Take that stress away from them. So, I mean, it's really down to the individual. Or you can find a happy balance. Maybe you really love doing the online engagement and talking with your potential brides, but you don't like the creative side in the background and having to stage all the images, do all the outreach with potential online collaborations, creating the captions, doing the hashtag research. There's so much that goes into it.
Oh my God.
And, the more you put in, the more you'll get out.
So what are your 3 top tips for utilising social media?
That's a great question, and I think it is very important to understand how to best utilise social media, because it can be such a great way to build your business. I'd say the first thing that you have to do is to have a strategy in place, is to understand what exactly are you trying to get out of social media.
Yeah.
Is it to build a following and to make money through social media? Is it to make new connections and to convert your audience into potential clients? Is it to network with other people in the industry? It can be used for all of those things. So I think having a really good strategy is so, so key. I think the second tip would be to be consistent. And that kind of falls in line with having a strategy. So once you know what you're trying to do and what you're trying to talk about, who you are as a brand, being consistent is so important because your audience are going to start to have an expectation from you.
Yes.
You know, perhaps you have a Makeover Monday. If that becomes a thing and people look forward to it every week, make sure you show up on Monday and you bring them something exciting because that's how you build relationships
and trust.
Exactly, trust and authenticity. And that's why social media has become such a huge area of advertisement for who you are, because people trust a personality more than they trust just your average advert online. They buy into personalities, they buy into your story, what makes you unique. So being consistent is key. And I'd say the third thing is bringing value. So if you've got something that you can, bring value to somebody, whether it's insider knowledge, whether it's 30 years experience, it could be anything, whatever it is, find a niche, find something that makes you different. And that's always going to be a pain point that you can bring to your audience.
Right, so moving on to websites. Do I pay a professional or do I learn how to do it myself?
Okay, so that's another really great question. And from experience, I've done websites for many, many brands. And if there's one thing I've learned through doing that, it's that you should really start with, this is my own personal opinion, by the way, you should start with your own user-friendly website that you can just play around with, whether it's Squarespace or Wix or whatever it is, because I can guarantee the first website you make will not be the website that you keep.
Right.
I think you will learn what works for your audience. You'll learn what you like, what you don't like. So I like to always, for the first year to 18 months, to just create, a really, really simple, user-friendly website that you're paying a subscription for. You're figuring out what you like as part of who you are as your brand. Are you really image heavy? Do you like text? Do you like video? Do you like loads of pages? Do you like it all on one page? Whatever it is, you'll learn that. And by using just, maybe a really easy website builder, you can then figure out what it is you like, and then a year on, develop it from there, and then go to a website, a professional website builder, and that's when you're going to invest the money. I think it's so important to know what it is you like, and you're not going to know that in the first month of starting your business. And I've seen a lot of businesses make that mistake where they've paid thousands of pounds to have this really, really sophisticated website built, which looks great, but they realise a year down the line that actually that's not what they wanted at all. And then they're going to pay another £3,000, £4,000. I think if you just hold back and start from the basics, that's for me personally, and from the clients that I've worked with, that's always been the way that I've advised. I like to be transparent, and I think that's the best way. That's how I would recommend doing it.
Okay, and what kind of sort of elements would I include? I mean, clearly people would need to know about you and perhaps see a gallery of images. Is there anything specifically that you would include?
Absolutely. So if we go back to the very beginning of this conversation, we spoke about brand identity, brand ethos, and brand story. And what I like to do is build a set of content pillars when I'm considering my content. So they could be things like your expertise. So that would be things like testimonials. That could be your personal brand. So who you are, why you, why would I choose you? They have to go on your website, absolutely. You also need to consider things like call to action. What are you trying to get your audience to do? And you need to make that as clear and concise and easy for them as possible. Are you trying to get them to give you a phone call? Are you trying to get them to send you an email? Whatever it is, that has to be so clear. I personally think that it should never take more than 3 clicks to get your audience to make that action. So whether it's an email, they shouldn't have to click more than 3 times to email you, whether it's a phone call, whether it's click here to book me, whatever it is. That has to be really clear for sure. So when mapping out your website, make sure that you cover all of the main topics and USPs, whatever it is about you that you feel pertain to your brand. So testimonials is so important for a makeup artist. Leading them back to your social media. If you put a lot of effort into your social media, make sure that they're being reverted back there.
Yeah. So as a general rule, what are the main items that you should include on your website?
I would definitely say about me. As a makeup artist, you are your brand. You are the person that they're buying into. So having an About Me page is really welcoming, and it's a really great way to already build that trust between you and your potential bride. And in that, you can include all sorts of things. You can include the products that you use, your experience, what's important to you as a bridal makeup artist. So it's a space for you to really introduce yourself and sell yourself, sell who you are. It's a really, really important thing to have on your website. And secondly, a testimonial space. This is a great way to show off what people are saying about you. It also gives it some realness. When a bride is given the opportunity to speak about their experience with you, it further develops that relationship. It shows that you really, really care, that you have that rapport with your brides, that they're not just another client. You're mentioning them by name. It's a really nice way to show that you build relationships.
Yeah.
And I think that's so important on your wedding day, isn't it?
Absolutely.
It's all about
the most
feeling.
important day of their lives.
It is. So having that really, personable relationship with somebody and showing that off in a testimonial way is really great. And I think it's very endearing for a bride. Obviously, you're going to need an information page, whether it's how I work, how to book me, almost like an FAQ page,
Yes.
I think. And over time, you're going to realize what people want to know.
Exactly.
So again, going back to what exactly people find important and the questions that people ask, I think that's really important. And then the final page that I think is great to have is some form of content-driven page, whether it's a blog space or a Real Brides imagery section, or a before and after section. I think it's really important to leave space for something that is a little bit more flexible, where you can have images, a bit of text, maybe some video. Think about the future of your brand. Always leave space for that.
And obviously a major call to action, how to book you.
Exactly. And not forgetting that having that blog section will help also with your SEO score. So, you can make sure that you're thinking ahead there as well.
Exactly. So we've spoken about branding and social media, and we've touched on websites and what we should be looking out for in terms of the design and what to include. And this all formulates part of your marketing. How else could I market myself?
One way that I think always works really well is, especially when you're starting out, is working with other people in the bridal industry. Look out for, are there any shoots going on? Is there any way that you can get your name out there? And to be honest, some people may not agree with this, but I do think you're going to have to, at the very start, look to collaborate. You're not always going to get paid work from the very start.
Yeah.
And I think in any industry you have to do that. So, if you can start to build relationships with other suppliers and industry leaders, it doesn't have to be makeup artists. It could be dress designers. It can be sound and light experts who do wedding production. It can be honeymoon suppliers, whatever it is. Absolutely. You have to go to these networking events, and there are some amazing networking events out there. I can leave some links. One in particular is Bride Lux, who I've worked with, and if you can find a way to collaborate with those people, all of these people are trying to do the same thing as you. They're trying to appeal to brides and grooms who need suppliers. So if you can get yourself on a big shoot and maybe do the hair and makeup or the makeup for a bridal designer and get yourself tagged in their images, that's great. And your name is going to be out there. You've also built a new relationship who would maybe refer you to one of their brides. So definitely look at the networking aspect of it.
And
Absolutely.
that's a great way of developing your portfolio as well, with great imagery.
Yeah, because then you're also, you're doing them a favour, but they're doing you a favour.
Yeah.
So, it's all about networking and building relationships.
Yeah.
Another thing that you could do is consider working with an influencer or a blogger or a public figure.
Yeah.
Keeping an eye on the whole bridal sphere is really important. So a bridal collaboration or influencer partnership could work really well in your favor. And generally how that might work is you need to find an influencer that embodies the same brand ethos as you.
Yes.
So, if you're let's just use you as an example. You are somebody that focuses on natural beauty.
Yeah.
So you may want to find somebody that's just got engaged that also likes that natural look.
Yes.
Because whoever you choose as your influencer to offer your services for,
They have to emulate
they
your
have
style.
to, because their audience are going to be interested in that type of lifestyle. So somebody like you're not going to choose, a really glam Essex girl.
Yes.
Because she might want something that's really bold and big and, the big lashes and something like that. But, a makeup artist who does that type of look, that would be perfect for them.
Exactly.
So you need to find bloggers and influencers that, as you say, emulate your service and emulate your brand. And then you can reach out to them in any way that you like. It's always nice to go in with a really personable email or DM and mention, I really talk about them. Let them know that you know about them and it's not just a random off the cuff message. And work with them. See how you can work with them on their wedding day. Can you offer, their on the day makeup? That would be amazing in exchange for exposure on their social media platform, because their audience may also be 10% engaged women.
Yes.
And if they like what you do for them on the wedding day, that's a couple of leads that you could get through from that. So thinking outside the box, it's not all about just social media, just website. It's who can you work with, who can you build a relationship with? Are there any bloggers out there that may fit your brand? Are there any industry specialists that you can work with on a shoot? There are so many opportunities out there. It just takes a little bit of mind mapping and thinking outside the box.
And the plus point as well is, this essentially is a free source of marketing. I mean, I have previously paid for advertising to go into magazines and all the rest of it, but the return on investment hasn't been as much as I would have hoped, as opposed to like social media and collaborating, as you said.
I mean, the reason why influencers have taken off so much is because they can create niche audiences because they're credible. People believe a person more than they believe an advert on TV. They buy into a lifestyle, and if they can just, get one little piece of that person's lifestyle, if that just means having the same makeup artist as them, that to them is everything, because these people create audiences that aspire to have a lifestyle like them. So they have so much power, especially in anything that's visual, whether it's their outfits, their hair and makeup, their home interiors. So really play up to that and utilize it. It's a great resource, and maybe you do have to do a day of so-called free work, but the return on that, it could be
huge, isn't it?
amazing. Yeah. Another thing that you could consider, especially if you're somebody that is particularly interested in writing, maybe you prefer to tap away at a keyboard rather than be on video or have pictures of yourself online, is you could go down the guest blogging route. So that would basically mean that you may create content for other websites, maybe it's for a local magazine, anywhere that does little guest posts. You could always reach out to people like that and position yourself as the expert in bridal makeup. And I think that's a really great way to get your name out there.
And it will get linked back to you, won't
And
it,
get
as well?
linked back to you, yeah. So if you've got lots of different channels that are all leading back to your website, to your social media, that not only helps you with your credibility as an expert, but it also helps with the traffic that you're receiving.
Exactly.
So it's a win-win.
Fantastic. Okay, so what about hashtags? How do these work? How many do you need? Where do you start?
So let's start with the number of hashtags that you can use. You can use up to 30 hashtags, and you really should be using all 30 hashtags. I've heard all sorts of things, only use 12, only use 9.
Yeah.
No, use all of them. They're there to be used. That's the first thing I'd like
Do you
to
need
say.
to hide them, like in a second?
So some people like to
Post.
add hashtags into the comments, which is a bit manual. I personally don't, but you can. And the algorithm on Instagram is always changing. I like to have them in the post, and I'll just do a couple of spaces so that they're not showing up in the the top two lines of your caption. But you can also put them in the comments, completely up to you and how much time you want to spend on it. When it comes to choosing your hashtags, this is really important. Make sure that your hashtags are relevant, because if your hashtags are not relevant, then in the algorithm, it's going to start to understand that the picture that is associated with your hashtag doesn't correlate, and therefore the algorithm isn't going to push that image. If, however, your picture is, let's say you've hashtagged natural bridal look, and people looking for that hashtag find your image, they think it's just what they were looking for, they've liked it, they've commented, they've engaged. Instagram is then going to realize that that hashtag is exactly what people are looking for. And they're going to then optimize that, and they're going to show that picture to more people. So it's really important that when you're choosing your hashtags, that you're not being lazy, that you're actually choosing hashtags that are relevant to the image. And what I like to do is to create groups of hashtags that I save into either a Word document or in the notes of my phone, and I'll give them all a category. So if I know that in my content pillars, every Monday I do a makeover, I will then create a group of hashtags called Monday Makeover hashtags. And all of those hashtags will be very, very relevant to Monday Makeovers.
So you just copy and paste those in?
Yeah. And if there's any in there that maybe aren't as relevant, maybe the photo has a bronze shimmery eye makeup look, I'll make sure to maybe swap one of those hashtags out and replace it with bronze shimmer eyeshadow, something like that. So it's really, really specific. But you've got to make sure not to be too specific. This is where the problem comes in.
Oh my goodness.
Because you want it to be generic enough that somebody would search for it, but not too generic to the point that there'll be millions of images coming up for that hashtag. Because
so what's too generic then in terms of, natural bridal look, for example?
Yeah. So when you're in the app, you can actually see how many search results come up for a hashtag. So what you don't want is something that comes up with 1 million plus, because you're going to be, a small fish in a huge pond, and hashtags come up chronologically. So you're going to quickly, fall to the bottom of that explore page. So you want something around about 5,000 plus search results, I would say. Obviously, you're going to learn over time which hashtags are working for your content, and that's kind of trial and error. So you might find one image does really well because of the hashtags, and you can see that in your insights. So it might say, this post, over 50% of your impressions were from hashtags. So that's where you've got to start thinking about strategy and look at those hashtags and think, right, those hashtags have performed really well for me, and this image obviously worked well with these hashtags. And make sure that you are taking note of that, and that you're thinking about how you can do that again and start thinking tactically.
Is there any sort of easy way of researching hashtags that would be beneficial for your particular niche, like bridal makeup, for example?
Absolutely. There are a couple of different tools online that you can either pay for, and there are some free ones as well, that will automatically search for top hashtags within a certain sector or, as specific as bridal makeup. And I will provide you with some of those so you can leave those. And they're really great, especially if you're a little bit overwhelmed and you don't know where to start. They're a really great starting point, and they also will show you the number of search results coming up for those hashtags. So it kind of does the hard work for you.
So what about Pinterest then? Because that's not actually a social media platform, is it? It's a search engine. How could I utilise Pinterest for my business?
Yeah, I think Pinterest is really interesting. I think it is a good thing to have. I personally, especially in kind of hair and makeup, I think Pinterest is a great way to almost send over a portfolio to a bride. If they ask for a list of your looks, a great way to just show them all of your looks could be in a board on your Pinterest. Instead of having to upload new ones every time to your blog and having to write about them, and it's a little bit more work. You could just have one space on your Pinterest that says, summer makeup looks, or whatever theme it is you want to put.
Or real brides.
Real brides, my real brides. And that is a great resource, not only for potential clients that you're already talking to, and they might say, have you got a space where I can look at all of your looks that you've ever created. I want some inspiration. It's also a great way, as you say, because it's a search engine, it's also a great way to drive new traffic who have come through from Pinterest, who might see a makeup look that they like, and then they'll click through from that image to your website. So it works two ways, and I think having it there is never a bad thing.
Okay, Monica, well, that was all absolutely fantastic information you've just shared with us. Thank you very much for your expertise.
Thank you so much for having me today. It's been really, really interesting to speak about social media and how it can really impact, new business starters, and I really hope to see them succeed.